does it mean the process of consultation for the amendment number 2 is also suspended?
I would not be surprised if the process is to be continued, regardless of the fact that Parliament has been closed, because I know for certainty that there are specific individuals who are very interested in having these amendments passed through. But in the context of where the process was now, so when the public consultations were finished, the next process was then the reading of the bill in Parliament, which I'm aware that that reading has already happened. And after that first reading, there was supposed to be a second reading, and I'm also sure a third reading. So that means that after Parliament and after it has been debated, it's forwarded to Senate. All of these processes have not happened. It has not been forwarded to Senate. And after it's been forwarded to Senate, Senate will also have its own processes. And soon after that, it will be forwarded to the president as it becomes law. So at this moment, we are at a point where the first reading has been done in Parliament. I'm not quite sure that now that Parliament has closed, how then are they going to proceed, considering that Parliament is closed. And I think that in this context, it's a great opportunity for citizens because it buys us time. I think the lockdown in the first instance slowed down the process of amending the constitution because they could not have the public hearings when they initially wanted to have them because of the lockdown. And then when the lockdown was flexed into the level 2 lockdown, the Parliament is closed. It's a great opportunity for citizens because it buys us time for us to mobilize and to engage our politicians. We engage the minister, the ministry, Parliament, and even the president, just to let them know that the general sentiment with the citizens is a definite no to the constitutional amendment bill number 2. I think I'll just round it up with something a bit controversial that happened with the Committee of Legal Justice. After the public consultations, the public hearings, the general majority of people in those hearings said no to the constitutional amendment bill number 2. And this was actually documented in a report that was produced by Parliament. And guess what? Parliament then said, okay, we understand people have said no. The majority of people have said no. And they produced a very dodgy and sketchy report, in my own view. But still, they acknowledged that people said no. But regardless, even after acknowledging that most people had said no to the constitutional amendment bill, the Portfolio Committee on Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs came out to then say, we are still going to proceed with these amendments. We are going to go forward, irregardless of people saying no. And this is what took us out, to go again and protest outside Parliament. Because how can you have people consulted and people say no? And after people saying no, you have, people in the Portfolio Committee and people in the Ministry of Justice, and you have people in Parliament just saying, we will go ahead with this process, irregardless of people saying no. So these are some of the concerns that people might actually want to be looking into.
Aren't you disappointed, Namatai and Vongai, that there isn't the reaction from the public that shows that this is important? That people have not come forward to support your cause, that you've not seen protests, saying this constitutional amendment should not proceed. Are you not surprised? Are you not disappointed? Vongai, can I come to you?
See, Zimbabwe is quite a complex environment where if you come out and if you even want to support, you're faced with resistance. And even if people would want to come out, they're afraid, which they are rightfully supposed to, because of the regime that we are currently in. But even that support that we have been receiving online, I mean, people have been signing our online petitions, and most people generally just didn't know about the constitutional amendment because they were not really talked about. But once they heard about our arrest, then they became, this was actually happening. How do I also aid up my voice? They would sign petitions, so in terms of support, bearing in mind the kind of environment that we are finding ourselves in, I wouldn't want to say that I'm disappointed. This is a start of a conversation. And I believe that, this is just piling up on the already injustices that's already happening. And it's just a matter of time up until people are saying, you know what, I think enough is enough. But this is just the start of the conversation. And I'm really grateful for the support that we are receiving.
Namatai, are you disappointed that people were not aware of this constitutional amendment? Point number one. Point number two, that the response, like Vongai has said, has rather been tentative. You are the lone ladies out there marching, holding placards, and there are no crowds behind you.
Okay, so I think in my own case, I have mixed feelings. I have mixed feelings. I think I'll say in the context of how the government and the Ministry of Justice and also Parliament have conducted themselves, I am severely disappointed because I think it exposed cracks and it exposed that in the context of our democratic program, a few political elitists can just decide the whole course of a whole nation of 16 million people and get away with it. So for me, that's a huge disappointment because in Parliament there are people, in the ministry there are people, in government there are people who were aware of this and they could have deterred this process on account of its legitimacy and the level of dishonesty that this process is surrounded with. In the context now of the public, again, I'll concur with Vongai that, people didn't actually know that this was happening. And if you look at how the process was, started, it has a lot of exclusionary tactics. I think it was in the best interest of the people behind this to make sure that as little people as possible are aware. There was no public awareness. And I'm grateful in a way. I think it wasn't a good experience. Being arrested is not good. Going back there in the cells is not a good experience. But I am grateful because it yielded the benefits of raising public awareness and making sure that people became conscious, about what was actually happening in the context of the constitutional amendments. However, I am, a bit unimpressed, post this awareness, as to how, the government has continued on this path of trying to amend the constitution. With regards to how people have not actually showed up, I just wanted to say that Vongai is right. Zimbabwe is a very complex country. And sometimes when people don't show up, I'm not making excuses for them, but I can honestly say that I can't blame them because sometimes people don't understand the gravity and what it takes out, from you when you are arrested, when you go out and you show up like that. There's a lot of backlash. Of course, there's a lot of support, and usually the support, especially in this context of COVID-19, has been online. But there's a lot of backlash that comes your way, and it actually changes your life in more ways than what people actually appreciate and understand. I tell people that me being out on bail and Vongai being out on bail, we are still technically, arrested. Even your lifestyle is arrested. Some of the experiences that we go through when we are behind in the cells are not very pleasant experiences. And I'm personally grateful of people such as Justina Mukoko and people such as Ivan Mawarire, among a long list of other individuals who have been there to walk me through and to keep me balanced, because I did not know this is what people go through. Right, like I tell people, like the whole of last week, I was in and out of court, because my bail conditions are too stiff, and we're trying to contest that. I was not even productive. You can't focus on anything else. So even now when I see people, being reluctant to participate in such things as, protests and demonstrations and whatever, it's because, I've even depleted my own personal savings that I had during this lockdown, because now I have, all this other extra, all those other extra costs that I'm incurring, simply because I was arrested. When you move around, when you're trying to get this, and even on the context of issues to do with personal security, I'm now having to maybe, take a via home or a taxi when I had no intention of doing that, because I'm concerned that, oh, maybe someone is following me or this is happening. So this is actually, some of the stuff that people go through, said in a nutshell. But I think maybe what I can just stress is that I don't think that people are ready to show up like that in this country. I think that, fear in this country is something that is very thick. You can almost touch it. It's so solid. You can almost, touch it. It's actually almost tangible. And it's something that has been, precipitated by years of violence and years of intimidation. And it's disappointing in the context that at the end of the day, because we are afraid to show up in very powerful ways, people just get away with murder. They get away with smuggling bomb in the Constitution with very minimum resistance whatsoever. So yeah, I have mixed feelings. With some people I understand, because it's a process. It's not like you just get arrested and it's easy. No, there's a whole bunch of stuff. And yeah, but maybe what I can just say is there are other ways of showing up.
So you say Namatai, you say that you are fatigued. The court sessions have weighed heavily on you. You've been meeting lawyers and reporting for bail. And one statement that you said that has stayed with me for a while, you're saying, even if I'm on bail, I feel the arrest every day. Talk to me about that.
Okay, so someone has been reading my tweets. Okay. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, those things, they alter your life. They alter how you live. It's very hectic. And I think that we must get to a point, because I've had a lot of people, I think I need to actually address this. It's a great opportunity to address this. When you are arrested, there's a lot of stuff that is said, like, oh, you're being sponsored by so and so, or who and so is behind you and whatever. And then people assume that because we are out there on the streets, we are going to get a very hefty paycheck at the end of it. But I want to just be very clear, particularly in my context and that of Vongai. When we went out, to the ministry and out on the streets, we were using our personal resources. Everything from placards to the markers and whatever, that is stationery from my own, personal, stationery that comes from me. Even in the context, I want to be very open. We had a lot of solidarity online. We had people tweeting, we were trending, but we actually struggled with bail money. For me, in both instances, until certain well-wishers and individuals actually stepped up. And I will not mention them because they prefer to have their privacy, but they just stepped out and they helped us. So I want to just say that it's not chocolates and roses, because now, like I keep saying, that I feel the arrest every day because you're put in a situation where you now have to, incur costs. And these are not just financial costs. It's mental costs, it's physical costs. You have to, adjust yourself in ways that people cannot even imagine. You even see the impact and the bearing on your family. I see it on my mother. I see it even on my work, and even on my workmates and my colleagues. Trevor, sometimes when you're arrested, there are people that the moment you're out of jail, they don't want to talk to you anymore. And that's a social dynamic that, you're like, oh, okay, I'm being avoided now, great. And there are people, so there's a lot to handle and a lot to deal with. So you actually feel like your life has been altered by that one particular, thing. And for me, like I keep saying, it's been very stressful. And this is how now I've actually begun to understand that, sometimes when you see these activists, they show up and then the next thing they're just quiet. It's not always that they are quiet because they got bored or the state, whatever. People actually do get tired because it's not just me who was arrested. Even my family, feels the arrest.
Wow. Vongai, I'm going to come to you now. This question to you now, Vongai, is Namatai has just been outlining how tough and lonely it is. How has it been for you being arrested? If you knew that what has happened to you would have happened before you started, would you do this, Vongai?
I would do it, because at the end of the day, it's more about my conscience. Watching people play around with the Constitution, people playing around with democracy, people playing around with even the games of the liberation struggle wasn't going to sit well for me. And part of the problems that we're having now is as a result of misguided rule of law and oppressive systems. and dictatorial systems, and part of which these amendments actually fall in that. So I am happy that I spoke out. I didn't remain quiet. I wasn't passive about it. In future, if people ask me, say, you know what, I did my part. I wasn't quiet. Whatever might have happened, it happened, but we made an effort.
Namatai, if you knew that this would happen to you, would you do this all over again?
Well, I did it again already. Yeah, because like I said, the first time when we went to the ministry, I did not think we'd get arrested at all. I just thought maybe they would send an angry guard or someone just to dismiss us and say, well, you're making noise or you're disturbing us or whatever. So I did not think at all that I would get arrested. But when we did go out the second time, because we had heard that Parliament was actually reading that bill, the same bill that people said they don't want, they're actually going forward with it. So when we went again the second time, at outside Parliament with Youngstone and Prince Gora, I did it again, and this time around it was even worse, because when we went out on that particular day, there were black boots, I think more than 100 of them, just spread out across Africa in its way. And I remember I was very, very scared. And I did a live on this, and I was just saying that I'm scared. It's a very scary thing, a very scary situation. And but again, we did it again. And I will keep stressing that the reason why I did it again is because, I've already been arrested once. So I'm just in a place where I've just told myself that, this is the price that sometimes we have to pay in the context of what democracy means. And also, like, I've reached a point in my consciousness as a citizen where I appreciate that, there is significance in what is in a document in the context of my future and my life every day after this. I always laugh with some of my friends that I know of that are in some of these political parties, who then say, no, but how come MPs are being recalled? But they were elected, by constituents of people, but they are recorded and these people are never consulted. I said, where were you when the documents were being changed? And because that's what people don't understand. Tomorrow you're going to be like, well, what's happening? But yeah, the documents were changed, and no one contested that, and that's how you will be governed. So yes, I've already done it again. I wouldn't say that I would do it again now. I'm not quite certain about that, but I think for me, it's always a question of necessity. I'm not a lunatic. If it's strategic for us to, do it that way, and we feel that it has more impact and it yields more results, then we have no option but to actually do it that way. But if there are other ways of engagement, besides, going out to be radical and to protest, we exhaust those. But in the context where it is beneficial that we take that path, then we have to just brave it up, suck it in, and just go ahead and do it.
I must mention, I know it's not the right thing to do to mention the ages of ladies, but in this instance, I think it's very important. Vongai, you are 23. Namatai, you are 21. And Namatai, you say that our future has been stolen, and it's up to us to get that future again. Is this part of getting that future again? And do you feel you've got the support to get that future again for your generation?
Okay, thank you so much for the question, Trevor. It's true, our future has been stolen. Our future has been stolen through how sometimes, legal frameworks are structured to legalize, the stealing and the looting. I always tell people that with each and every dollar that is stolen, it's stolen from all of us. With each and every document that is altered and we are not consulted, all of that is feeding into, disrespecting us as a people. So I always say that, we have the power to get it back, but it only happens if we utilize the numbers. When one person shows up, It's something that is interesting and that is intriguing. On social media, we can talk about it, but it's not enough. And like I always say, I believe in the power of small things done consistently and in the power of small things done together. The problem that we have as a society is that we are not doing things together and we are not doing things consistently. I don't even have to do too much. I just have to play my part in my own small way, and the next person does that, and the next person does that. And if 10 million, 14 million Zimbabweans are doing a small thing, feeding into the same thing, I believe that's how we get our future back. So it's just basically about reviving the faith in community in each of us, reviving that belief in all of us together are better and stronger than one of us. I don't actually like this thing where people come, on social media and they clap hands for us. They call us heroes. They celebrate us. Everyone is a hero. We all have a hero inside of us. We just have to do, the small things that matter in our small corner. And if everyone is doing that consistently, and if everyone is doing that together, that is how we get our future back. And there will be backlash. There will be, a lot of bad things that happen to people. But we must be the generation that gets to a point where we say, not imprisonment, not abduction, not insults, none of that can deter us from being able, to fight and get our future back. Because at the end of the day, I want to be very honest with people. The fact that you're going to a hospital where there are no doctors, you are already on death row. The fact that you get into a Zupco where there's no social distancing, where, the combi drivers are speeding up like they're crazy, you're already on death row. Living in Zimbabwe, you're already on death row. If the health system doesn't kill you, the transport system will kill you. If the transport system doesn't kill you, something else will. And therefore, I tell people all the time that we have absolutely nothing to lose. We have to fight for our dignity and we have to fight for the future of our children, because I'm 21 years old and I am very hopeful because, for what Zimbabwe is becoming. And I've often told myself that I would not want to have any of my kids living in a Zimbabwe that I've personally experienced. Because all I've seen is disorder. The good things that I know about Zimbabwe are things that my parents tell me or older people tell me. I've never seen a functional society. I've never seen things that work. And we have to be in a position where we reimagine and we redefine how we want the future to look like, especially for us as young people. So that's what I'm just saying. There's a price to be paid. And if we want a good Zimbabwe, we want an amazing Zimbabwe, we have to be willing to pay the price in full. And not say, no, I don't want this to happen to me. No, that's part of the process. And we have to be willing to accept that and play our part.
Vongai, some people say we need new leaders. And I sometimes say, I don't think we need so much new leaders as much as we need more of people like you. We need a new us. Our politics is broken. It needs to be fixed. It's not going to be fixed by a few people. It's going to be fixed by a change of mindset in the majority of us. What's your response to that, Vongai?
It's a paradox, actually.
Yeah.
Because I also value the current leaders that we have now. I also value them. They've got certain wisdom that we do not have, even if we say that we will need new leadership. They've got certain experiences that we do not have. So we need to engage in dialogue and start saying, okay, let us now create a system, a transitional system, where we are bringing in the new guys and also not totally forgetting about the old guys. Because I even see it to family, things that happen in our family. Sometimes there are bad things that happen, but that doesn't mean that even if I come in and say, I can do better, I will always fail if I do not get knowledge from those who were before us. So what's needed now, I think, fundamentally, is we now need to start having a dialogue where everyone's going to be a part of that dialogue. And even you, the old Madalas, coming in with knowledge and your experience, because you knew what Zimbabwe was before it got here, and you know what exactly for us to get here.
Mm.
I was born in 1997 when things were becoming hard in Zimbabwe. To the extent that I don't even know what it was like to get student grants, to, you know, being Zimbabwe being the breadbasket of Africa. But you've got knowledge of what was happening. You know what was going right and what was going wrong. So I think it's more of a diffusion that needs to be happening. And we now need the old leaders to say, we have failed, having those honest conversations that, you know, we failed A, B, C, D. And we now need you, the new guys, to come in and also help us in this aspect. It all starts from a process of dialogue and of consensus, of saying, okay, we are here as a nation. We are not happy. Even for the current leaders that we have, they're also not happy about the status quo that we have in Zimbabwe. But maybe at times they don't know how to fix it. And then the new guys are coming and say, okay, we can fix these aspects. But in terms of these aspects, because I mean, I have total respect for the old guys, because I mean, they managed to remove the Ian Smith regime. That alone is something that we cannot take away from them. And it needed people who had precision. It needed people who could plan. And I think that, you know, it's something that even for a generation, we are not capable of doing that. Because I mean, we're having this conversation of people not coming out. But people were speaking with one voice. Zimbabweans managed, Black people managed to liberate this country. So it obviously means that certain people were doing certain things right, which we can't do. In as much as you might think, oh, you know, we are wise, we're all that. So we need to have dialogue, we need to have consensus, and we need to swallow our pride and work together for the greater good of Zimbabwe.
Namatai, is there space in this struggle for old Madalas like me?
Okay, I hope this is not a trick question.
No, it isn't.
And I hope you allow me to answer very honestly.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for the question, Trevor. So I think what I would just say is that I remember having a very I love intergenerational discourse. I love intergenerational dialogue. I do believe that there is a place for you know, the older generation in a society like Zimbabwe, where almost 70% of the population are young people. But there is a very you know sound place, a very strong place for people who are much older. I think I'll just bring it back to a conversation that I've had with Dr. Nkosana Moyo. And he spoke, you know, really powerfully about the need to have smart and brave young people. He said it's not enough to be brave, you've got to be smart. It's not enough to be smart, you also got to be brave. And when he stated it, didn't really make sense at the time, but now, you know, when I was doing my reflections, I thought, yeah, it makes, you know, a lot of sense. Like what Vongai was saying, became, you know, an independent state because they were brave young people. There might have not been a lot of smart young people, but they were definitely brave. And we see, you know, the contrast now in our society. Now you have a lot of smart young people, too educated for their own good, but they're not brave. So I would actually say that moving forward, we actually need to, you know, cultivate that culture of bravery, that culture of courage. Maya Angelou, you know, the great poet, she once said that courage is the most important of all the virtues, because without courage, it is impossible to practice any other virtue with consistency. When you don't have courage, you can't be consistently kind. You can't be consistently active, you can't consistently participate, and you can't consistently pursue a goal or to focus on a particular you know, objective and actually see it through, because you don't have the courage to pull it through. And in our generation, that is something that we have to, you know, to really bring back, that courage and that bravery. You know, to look beyond ourselves, to look at the personal sacrifice that we have to give in, because it's not enough for us to be smart. We are very smart. We have a lot of smart young people. We also have to be brave as well, because if you are just brave and you're not smart, you are a mercenary for hire. You're just a soldier. You know, you can't think for yourself and be strategic. And if you're smart, but you're not brave, that is also problematic, because you are unable to, stand for your country and to defend your country. So we actually need both. And it becomes something that our generation has to look into, so that we are both brave and smart. Then with regards to the old people, I actually think that there is actually need for us to give space for younger people. It is a myth and it is a lie when people say that you are too young for this, you're too young for that. When people watching myself and Vongai go out and talk about the constitution and protest about the constitutional amendment bill, the sentiment was that no, these kids are being sent by someone and whatever. But when people actually did engage us, the sentiment now shifted to say, wow, they actually know what they're talking about. I'm 21, Vongai is 23. We actually understand what the constitution is. We know the provisions in the constitution, and we understand it, we appreciate it. So my point exactly is to then say that it's possible to have younger people that are more mature, that understand things more than older people, just as it is possible to have the inverse. And I think that this culture of discriminating young people and keeping them down simply by the virtue that they are young is something that we have to do away with, because it's very old-fashioned and it has no place in a democratic and progressive society. You look at countries like Finland, you've got young women that are becoming prime ministers, and that is actually the new fashion, and we have to adopt that, because that's the new cool. And I would actually further go on to say that when we look at our constitution in itself, it is also one of the greatest legal instruments that is being used to keep young people from participating in places where it matters, where it matters the most. I would actually then say that, why do you have to be 40 years old for you to run for president? Why do you have to be 40 years old for you to be appointed a senator, a judge, a commissioner? Why do you have to wait until you're 40? There are brilliant people. Fatima Harris, 34, 35, she's brilliant, should make a great judge, should make even a great president. Why does she have to wait until she's 40? When the Constitution says a youth is a person between the ages of 15 to 35. Why are we putting these age limitations? These are things that we have to contest. I think that we must advance ourselves as a society that prioritizes meritocracy, and proven integrity and track record, as opposed to a society that puts too much emphasis on aspects to do with age. So these are some of the things that I think that have to be there in our society, opening up space for young people. It makes no sense that in the current parliament, before Honorable Mamumbe was called, she was the only young person who was still left in that parliament, who was under the age of 35. Everyone else is above 35. In 2018, in the 2018 elections, about 6 members of parliament made it who were under the age of 35, which gives us about a 2.87% representation of youth parliament. Out of all the 210 seats, only 6 young people under the age of 35 were elected, but yet the majority of the population, 70%, are young people. So those are some of the issues that we have to be in a position to analyze, to then say, give young people space, because even in the political space, young people have a lot more hurdles to overcome, because they are systematically, technically, legally excluded from being able to participate in places where it matters most.
Wow. Vongai, I'm going to ask both of you this question. I mean, you were young, you've kept on saying it, and I've kept on saying it. And the question that I'm going to ask you is, how come you've turned out the way you've turned out, Vongai? What makes you different? Where were you born, Vongai? How were you raised? What has been your journey so far? If you could just briefly outline that to the viewers.
So I was born here in Harare at Mbuyanehanda Hospital. And I'm a product of my environment. My father would always, even up until now, he always makes us watch news at 8 because he wants us to be informed about what's happening. I remember hating him when I was growing up. Chititi, you are not, because we'd always want to watch SABC. And Chititi, you are not South Africans. So you need to know what's happening around you. And then afterwards, I think it's also something that me and Namatai have got in common. We went to female schools. We went to Roosevelt Girls Eye, where I think that most of my feminism was developed and was strengthened there. And then afterwards, I was fortunate enough that to start working soon after I finished high school, and I got exposed to quite a lot of things. I remember when I was working at Samsung at the airport, I saw ministers and government officials always flying in and out, and then I would always question myself, who is paying this? Who's financing their trips? And it was my money actually through tax. And I started getting bitter about it because there was no value for money. One thing that I value is I don't want to, people need to get value for their money. Because if we are playing with people's money, we are playing with their sweat, we are playing with their blood. So if there is ever anything that is going to, that puts people off or that gets people angry, is the issues to do with money. So from then at the airport, I started seeing, the corruption that was happening by some workers by some airport staff, where they were facilitating the transition of illegal commodities. And I would always question myself, so what's the ultimate goal of this? Why are they doing this? And so when Samsung eventually closed, the anger grew much more because it closed as a result of the economic conditions that we're now starting to dilapidate in Zimbabwe. And most people were now being retrenched. And then afterwards, that's just how it started. I got involved in politics. I ran for public office as an independent candidate. I lost, I learned quite a lot of lessons, and now I'm here being a policy advocate and possibly with the hopes of running again for public office one day. But before I do so, I first want to capacitate myself. I want to grow my skill set. I want to grow my knowledge base. I want to have worked in various different sectors so that when I get in politics or when I'm starting to ask people to vote for me, I know that I'm going to be effectively representing them, not just going to parliament or to council for the sake of it, without actually giving citizens value for their money, because it's through their money that pays these public officials, these public leaders. So yeah, I'm on a journey. And I don't know, we are waiting to see where it's going to take me.
Fantastic, fantastic. And Namatai, what explains your journey? Where did you start, and what has made you so passionate about young leaders and the Constitution and democracy, Namatai?
Okay, so I'm not quite sure what happened to me, to be honest. I can't specify with certainty what exactly has brought me. I think it's just an entanglement of factors. Suddenly some of these things were circumstantial, they were situational, they just happened to me, and I guess I just responded. I'm a very proud African. I wear my hair African, I rastas, I dreadlocks. I believe in Africa, and I believe particularly in Zimbabwe. And I think I went through this particular, paradigm shift and revolutionary way of thinking, in my high school years, when I would read such works as Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Chinua Achebe, all of these African authors, and I thought, well, they write excellently, including Dambudzo Marechera. All of these were just amazing, works of literature, and they taught me a thing or two, and they taught me to view myself and see myself in a certain way. And ever since then, I've often been very quizzical. To this date, I am quizzical about the current state of affairs and the current, state in which we find people of African, descent across the world. Consistently, we are, the most prejudiced. And especially when you're Black and you're a woman, when you're African and you're a woman, it's terrible. You know, we are some of the poorest. You know, that always has been the question. And I brought that down to my context to then ask myself, you know, where does this all start? Where do we fit into this whole narrative of this human race, of this world? I mean, why are all these things happening to me? How come I'm a very smart young woman, but when I finished high school and had 15 points, my family was so poor that my single mom felt to put me, you know, through college. I had to be resourceful. Now I'm paying for my own school fees. How is it we're so poor that a lot of young people are dropping out of school? How is it, you know, Black people like us suffer? How is so? It was just a continuous process of being able to question and inquire. And every day I question and I inquire. I keep asking questions, and I keep hoping and praying that I'm asking the questions that matter. And that's just how my brain works. In the context of what I wish for this country, because it's not just about this country, it's also about this continent. As Africans, and particularly young people in our generation, we need to get serious about improving the conditions of Black people and people of African descent everywhere. We need to restore our dignity and our pride. African history is littered with stories of great empires, great kings and queens of the past. And, you know, look at Egypt, look at Kush. You know, look at Great Zimbabwe, look at Shaka Zulu, you know, you look at Kwenzinga. All of these are stories of magnificent kingdoms that were glorious and that even Westerners looked up to, and they said, wow, these people are amazing, they're organized. And yet we have lost all of that for more than 400 years. It's been gone. And there has to be a generation of people that initiates the process of getting that back. I thought I saw a flicker of that in people like Kwame Nkrumah. I thought I saw, you know, a flicker of that in people like Nelson Mandela. And we have to take up from where they left off, and we have to, you know, move forward with that and try to make sure that our generation turns things around. I think in a nutshell, what I just believe is our generational mandate, which I have come to the realization of because of all the books I've read, all the travels and the experiences and the people I've met. I think our generational mandate is summed up in three. Number one is wealth creation. Number two, it's building strong institutions. And number three, it's climate action. Again, I'll say you know, wealth creation because poverty is something that a lot of African leaders have failed to tackle. And one of the reasons why they failed to tackle poverty is because of corruption. And it saddens me at this moment, I'm saying this, Hopo Chungono is actually in jail for standing up against, you know, COVID funds that were being looted. And yet the day that Vongai and myself went to court, Obadiah Moy was there and he got bail. He's probably home having a good time. But he is one of the people who was facilitating for that corruption to happen. And as long as things like that are still happening, we are forced to live in a continent where we are very poor. And with each and every dollar that is looted, it's not just looted from our generation, it's being looted from our children, it's being looted from their children, and the ripple goes on and on. So we have to be the generation that addresses poverty. The second issue, like I said, is building strong institutions. I always tell people, if we had strong institutions, we would not be amending the Constitution in the first place, because that in itself undermines democracy, and it further weakens our institutions and our ability to have oversight, particularly in reference to the executive and our leaders. We need strong institutions because, again, that helps to fight corruption. We need strong institutions because, again, it's quite instrumental in the context of wealth creation, because when we have weak institutions, whatever gains, whatever financial resources we're gaining along the way, all of that is gone and it's not even accounted for. We need strong institutions, you know, to build sustainable democracy and to make sure that our societies, you know, become friendly societies for each and every one of us. The final thing is climate action. Climate action is a big thing on our agenda as young people. And I always say this because the world in itself is going through a crisis. And we are the last generation that can actually do something meaningful and impactful to at least mitigate, or if possible, even reverse what has happened in the context of what is happening with the climate. Climate change is a real thing for our generation. The older generation might not care because maybe they will not be around in the next 20 years. But we are the people that will face the full effects of what climate change is head on, in the next 10, 20, 30 years. And we are the first generation, that will, experience it its full intensity if we don't do something about it. So those are some of the the things that I think about consistently on a daily basis. But I do know most of what I am to the good support system. My mom is an amazing woman. She always made sure we had books to read. She always tried her best. She raised us. She was a single parent, and she did her best in the given sort of circumstances. There are other organizations, people I can't even mention, that have helped me along the way, but I can only speculate as to how I became who I am. But I'll say it's just a mixture of factors, and I can't specifically say that this is what made me who I am. I think that's how I would respond to that.
The two of you are such a great inspiration. And I consider myself privileged to have spent so much time having this conversation with you. I think I'm in no doubt that I'm looking at two young ladies who are going to be leaders of this country one day, and that excites me. Listening to your thoughts. Thank you so much for creating the time to be on In Conversation with Trevor. I hope you remain safe, that you are not harassed, that you remain as courageous as you have been, because democracy can be a clumsy thing sometimes. So I wish you all the very best with the work that you are, the noble work that you are embarked on. So allow me now to thank you, ladies, for being in conversation with Trevor. And let me turn to our viewers who are in Zimbabwe, who are all across the African continent and in the diaspora, for watching In Conversation with Trevor. And to remind you that In Conversation with Trevor is a weekly show. To ensure that you don't miss out on any of these quality conversations, please click on this subscribe button so that you get an alert every time we have a new show. So until next time, cheers to you all.